Hey, welcome to Sleep Crime Stories. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? A quick comment and a subscribe go a long way, it really helps. Now, turn down the lights, and let's begin tonight's case. On October 30th, 2011, David Swift reported his wife missing after returning home from a Halloween party the night before. The previous night, Karen arrived back home, tucked their daughter Ashley into bed, and slept with her. The next morning when David woke up, Karen was nowhere to be seen. When the police search began, they discovered Karen's abandoned vehicle on the side of a rural highway with a flat tire caused by a rusty screw. Initially, investigators revealed no signs of foul play in the vehicle or at the Swift residence, but suspicions quickly began to surround David. Karen Swift was a 44-year-old mother of 4 living in Dyersburg, Tennessee. She was cheerful and took on several jobs, such as cleaning houses and working as an aerobics instructor in order to help support her family. According to her friends, she was devoted and self-sacrificing to the point that her needs came second to others. Despite her efforts to maintain stability for her children, Karen's marriage to David Swift was fraught with tension. Karen and David's relationship had a history of infidelity on both sides. David had previously engaged in an affair that resulted in the birth of another child. Although they reconciled after this incident, the trust between them remained fragile. In September 2011, Karen filed for divorce, citing ongoing issues in their marriage. This decision came just 3 weeks before her disappearance. The filing for her divorce marked a significant turning in their relationship. Karen's decision to seek independence raised tensions at home. David reportedly reacted negatively to the divorce, feeling threatened by Karen's desire for autonomy. On October 29, 2011, David Swift made a significant decision to relocate his family from Arkansas to Dyersburg, Tennessee. This decision was reportedly made independently and rapidly, following ongoing tensions in his marriage to Karen. David had secured a job in manufacturing management in Dyersburg and purchased a new home without prior consultation with Karen. The abrupt nature of the move left their eldest son, Preston, behind to complete the school year. This decision to separate the family during such a critical transition raised questions about David's motivation and intentions. Karen saw their new home for the first time while unloading their belongings, an experience that added to the complexity of her situation. As the family settled into their new environment, Karen attempted to adapt despite a rushed transition. She quickly found ways to earn money by cleaning houses and teaching aerobics classes. However, David's controlling nature began to manifest more prominently during this period. Friends noted that he was not keen on Karen working outside the home, which contributed to the rising tensions between them. The move marked a turning point in their relationship. David's behavior became increasingly erratic as he struggled with feelings of jealousy and insecurity regarding Karen's independence. Reports indicate that he began stalking her during outings and confronting her about her interactions with friends. This backdrop of tension and control set the stage for the events that would unfold in the following days. Investigators would later scrutinize these dynamics as they pieced together the timeline leading up to Karen's disappearance. In the early morning hours of October 30th, 2011, David Swift contacted law enforcement to report that his wife, Karen Swift, was missing. David expresses concern for her well-being, indicating that he was worried about her whereabouts. This call initiates the formal investigation into Karen's disappearance. David's report prompts police to take immediate action, leading them to gather information about Karen's last known activities and her interactions prior to her disappearance. As part of the investigation, police began searching for Karen Swift. At approximately 3 p.m. on October 30th, officers discovered her white 2004 Nissan Murano abandoned on the side of Millsfield Highway, roughly a quarter-mile from the Swift family home. The vehicle has a flat tire caused by a rusty screw found embedded in it. Upon inspection, law enforcement notes that there were no signs of foul play inside the car. Personal belongings such as her keys and purse are missing. Forensic testing of the vehicle yielded no evidence of blood or struggle. This discovery of the abandoned vehicle raised further questions about what happened to Karen and led investigators to expand their search into the surrounding areas. At home, David claimed that he last saw Karen around 2 a.m. when she returned home with their daughter Ashley after the Halloween party. Ashley had called her mother to pick her up from a friend's house on her way back. David told the police that both the mother and daughter went to bed shortly after arriving home. During subsequent interviews with police, David mentioned that he briefly checked on Ashley. After realizing she was safe, he returned upstairs to sleep. His account of the events raised questions among investigators regarding the timeline of Karen's disappearance and his potential involvement. David also indicated that he was unaware of any plans Karen might have had for the night and expressed confusion about her sudden absence. Witnesses' accounts revealed a pattern of controlling behavior exhibited by David Swift towards his wife Karen Swift. Friends of Karen testified about his jealousy and possessiveness, noting instances where he would exclusively call Karen while she was out with friends. Friends also confirmed that David had a tendency to stalk Karen while she was out. This had led to confrontations of a serious nature in their relationship. These behaviors raised concerns about Karen's safety and contributed to the investigation into her disappearance. As detectives gathered evidence, they noted the significance of these testimonies in understanding the dynamics of their troubled marriage and David's potential involvement in her fate. In the days following the disappearance, David himself would go to the law enforcement authorities and offer his help in finding any trace of his lost wife. One notable thing when he arrived at the local station was his use of crutches. According to him, he had re-injured his knee, which was operated on a few months earlier. An injury to his knee coinciding with his wife's disappearance, given their troubled marriage, seemed too good to just be a coincidence. On December 10, 2011, a significant breakthrough occurred in the investigation into Karen Swift's disappearance. Human remains were discovered in a cemetery located less than 3 miles from the Swift family home. The discovery was made by 2 individuals, John Robinson and Mark Rickman, who were visiting the cemetery when they stumbled upon the remains. Law enforcement was promptly notified, and investigators arrived at the scene to secure the area. The remains were later identified as those of Karen Swift through forensic analysis. An autopsy was conducted to determine the cause of death. The medical examiner concluded that Karen had sustained blunt force trauma to the head, which was classified as a homicide. This finding shifted the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. The autopsy revealed that the trauma would have been fatal if Karen had been alive at the time of injury. However, due to the passage of time since her disappearance, determining the exact circumstances surrounding her death proved challenging. Investigators noted that there were no signs indicating that the murder occurred at the cemetery. Rather, it appeared that Karen had been moved there post-mortem. The discovery of her remains prompted a renewed focus on David Swift as a suspect. The nature of her injuries and the location of her body raised critical questions about his involvement in her death. Investigators began to scrutinize David's actions and statements more closely, seeking any evidence that could link him to this tragic outcome. Investigators uncovered that Karen had obtained a second cell phone, which she used to avoid being monitored by David. This phone was kept secret from him, indicating a desire for privacy amid their troubled relationship. During their investigation, David claimed he was unaware of this second phone. However, authorities discovered that the number was programmed into his work phone, raising suspicions about his knowledge of Karen's actions. During the interviews with investigators, David appeared preoccupied with Karen's behavior rather than expressing concern for her well-being. Detective McCree noted that David's inability to focus on anything other than his wife's alleged drinking and partying habits suggested he might be hiding something. Despite these observations, investigators struggled to find physical or eyewitness evidence linking David to the homicide, causing the investigation to stall. In the months following Karen's disappearance, David relocated to Alabama and remarried. He remained an involved parent to their daughter Ashley, but did not provide any new leads in the case. Ashley expressed a growing desire to understand what happened to her mother, but felt increasingly hopeless about finding answers. Authorities also examined David's claims regarding Karen's behavior after they moved to Dyersburg. He suggested that she had changed due to new friendships, particularly with Bill and Kathy Bona. This narrative was scrutinized as investigators sought to determine its relevance to her disappearance. From December 16th to 20th, 2011, forensic examinations were conducted at both the Swift home and Karen's vehicle. Investigators found no signs of foul play in the house, but noted some disarray in Karen's bedroom. They discovered 7 gallons of bleach in the home, which David claimed were for cleaning purposes related to a dog poisoning incident involving a neighbor. As the investigation continued in January 2012, law enforcement made public appeals for information regarding Karen's disappearance and death. They sought witnesses who might have seen her or had knowledge of her last known whereabouts. Despite these efforts, the lack of concrete evidence against David hindered progress in the case. While authorities pursued various leads and gathered testimonies that pointed toward David's potential involvement in Karen's murder, they ultimately fell short of obtaining definitive evidence during 2011 and 2012. The investigation remained open as they continued to seek justice for Karen Swift. On August 8, 2022, David Swift was charged with first-degree premeditated murder in connection to the death of his wife, Karen Swift. This marked a significant development in a case that had remained unsolved for over a decade. The arrest came as a shock to many in the community and to Karen's family, who had spent years grappling with uncertainty regarding her disappearance. Ashley Swift, Karen's daughter, expressed her confusion and distress over her father's arrest. After enduring years of investigation without a clear suspect, Ashley found it difficult to process the sudden change in circumstances. "I was trying to figure out why," she remarked, highlighting the emotional turmoil that accompanied the news of her father's charges. The context of the arrest was particularly striking for the Dyersburg community. For more than 10 years, residents had followed the case closely, often discussing it amongst themselves as they sought answers about what happened to Karen. The lack of progress in the investigation had left many feeling frustrated and hopeless. Therefore, when authorities finally announced David's arrest, it stunned both family members and community members who had long awaited justice for Karen. Danny Goodman, the prosecutor at the time, believed that all his predecessors could get the case to result in a decisive verdict due to an inadequate approach. He stated that personnel who sought justice for Karen were simply waiting for a supposed key piece of evidence that could help prove that David was guilty. As the case unfolded, it was later learned that such a piece of evidence didn't exist. During the investigation, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out and the entire world, along with Karen's case, came to a halt. However, the prosecutors, instead of stopping their efforts, took that time to review around 30 large bins of files related to Karen's murder. Goodman states that they never found that one big thing that could prove David was guilty. What they covered instead was the fact that the case was very much like a puzzle with a clear motive. Commenting on the mindset of David, the prosecutor stated, "I think he saw that he was losing control." It was later revealed that throughout the course of their relationship, David was able to control everything Karen did and everywhere she went. However, he noticed that his control over her was starting to slip away. In addition to the loss of control, Karen going out for drinks, to party, and an impending divorce all added to his frustration, causing him to plot the murder. The pieces of the puzzle the prosecution put together resulted in a concrete theory that the murder of Karen Swift actually took place. Sharing the details of the alleged crime, the prosecution stated that the murder took place inside the Swift family home, and then David staged a series of events to make it look like an accident. The events supposedly took place as follows. On October 30th, when Karen got a call from Ashley, she picked her up. Both of them returned home and had fallen asleep beside each other in the bed. From here onwards, David moved Ashley into a different room and then proceeded with his intentions by dragging Karen to the garage and violently stomping on her head. To make the murder look like the aftermath of an abduction, he loaded Karen's body into the car. After that, he drove to the cemetery where he dumped her body and covered it up to make it look like she had been abducted. In the days that followed, David willingly came to the authorities and volunteered to help find his wife's killer in whatever way possible. The prosecution also stated that he would come to the authorities on crutches to emphasize his inability to drag Karen's body. In addition, he showed that he was using the crutches because he had re-injured his knee after undergoing knee surgery that had taken place in prior months. In addition, The prosecutors also refuted the possibility of Karen actually leaving on her own and being abducted. The fundamental basics for such a claim was that several illogical things had to be true. For instance, Karen would have had to have plans of meeting someone if she was going out on her own, but there was no evidence to suggest such a thing. In addition, if she didn't go out on her own, why would she wake up David by moving Ashley into another room and moving Kelly from David's bed? Another key factor worth considering here is the fact that toxicology reports had shown that Karen had taken Benadryl before going to sleep. Benadryl is a sleeping aid, and if Karen had a plan of going out after dropping off Ashley at the house, why would she take a sleeping pill before she supposedly went out? To add more concreteness to their theory of the alleged crime, the prosecutors provided a lot of evidence. However, it was deemed circumstantial. In addition, the evidence had been uncovered more than a decade ago. A major claim they made rested on the report, which highlighted the use of a sleeping aid, and the fact that phones were inactive after he got them home. They also stated that the information pertaining to Karen's secret phone and David's demeaning comments was a lie and shared new details. Up till this point in the trial, it was revealed her secret phone had no activity on it after she had gotten into bed with Ashley. However, a forensic extraction found that the phone had indeed been in use, and a call to the device's voicemail was made. The forensic reports also detailed the fact that the call was made at 9:55 a.m. on October 30th. By this time, several hours had passed, and investigators had not found Karen or her phone. In addition, it was also revealed the phone had been connected to the family's Wi-Fi, and the only adult that was home at the time the call was made would have been David. To back their claim of David faking his knee being injured again, the prosecution referred to a neighbor's testimony. While speaking to the court, one of the Swift family's neighbors had stated that David helped them move hay bales. The approximate weight of the hay bales was around 60 pounds, and the neighbor claimed that David was helping without using crutches. The prosecution had painted a circumstantial theory, backed by evidence, that showed David had committed the murder. However, the defense refuted such claims. Allegations against David were largely based on the claim that he had been a controlling husband. But his lawyer, Daniel Taylor, presented a different fundamental perspective and narrative. He stated that David Swift was not a husband trying to control Karen's life, but was one who was simply concerned about his partner. Details about Karen's behavior that were revealed throughout the trial were that she was involved in alcoholism and partying. However, testimonies given by the neighbors had shed much-needed light on Karen's activities. During the trials, one of the neighbors had mentioned finding Karen passed out on their sofa naked during a party, and David was called to come pick her up. As per the information from the testimonies given during the trial, Karen was supposedly involved in some sort of sex ring and was interested in seeing other men. In addition to these details, the defense attorney also argued that there was evidence to support the state's description of the murder. He highlighted the fact that if Karen was indeed stomped on the head, why was there no sign of blood in the garage or the car? He also brought into question the state's description of David staging the attempt as an abduction by stating that there was no evidence of David leaving the house that night. Another critical fact that Taylor reiterated was that the medical examiner who had determined Karen's cause of death no longer believed that she had been stomped on the head. The defense held their ground on David injuring his knee again. He went on to claim that even if it were to be assumed that Karen was stomped on the head, doing so would have been impossible for David. At the time of the murder, David was on crutches, so he wouldn't have been able to stomp on Karen's head using the injured leg. In addition, his injured leg would not have been able to support his own body weight while he attempted to stomp on her with the other one. This claim was further solidified by testimony of David's physical therapist, who stated that David had had extreme difficulty walking and lifting. The defense lawyer also ruled out the possibility of blood being cleaned up using bleach. The prosecution had cited a picture of bleach near the pool, but Taylor categorized the evidence as insufficient by stating that the murder took place in October and the pool got bleached during that time of year. Ashley had also testified against what the prosecution claimed. She stated that it was her own mother who moved her to a different room. Her reconciliation of the event was called into question, but she stated that she knew it was Karen who moved her because it's natural to know what one's mother feels like. To solidify her testimony, she even went on to say that she is comfortable going to the grave knowing and believing it was Karen. Apart from this, Ashley also believes that her father's injury alone was enough to refute the prosecution's claims of him stomping Karen. She mentioned that Karen was an athletic woman and someone in her father's condition at the time of the murder simply could not move or overtake her. To further emphasize David's innocence, Taylor stated that the phone the prosecution was referring to was based on unreliable evidence and again referred to David's condition and inability to commit the murder. Based on the available information, linking the phone to the murder does seem a bit far-fetched. It is possible that Karen had forgotten her secret phone at the house because when going out she would have woken up after taking a sleeping aid. In addition, the defense did claim that David was concerned about his partner. If that claim is believed to be true, it's possible that he made the call to check the voicemail and determine her whereabouts. The weakest aspect of the case against David Swift was the absence of physical evidence. Investigators found no incriminating traces in the house, the vehicle, or on his person. Additionally, there was no murder weapon, leading prosecutors to theorize that David had used his foot despite his visible physical limitations at the time. Throughout the trial, David's defense argued, despite objections from the state, that the charges were politically motivated. They suggested that with no direct evidence tying David to the crime, the sheriff and district attorney, both facing re-election, felt compelled to pursue the case under the political pressure. When the jury returned from deliberations, they delivered an unexpected outcome. David Swift was found not guilty of first-degree and second-degree murder, as well as attempted first-degree and second-degree murder. However, the jury remained deadlocked on the charge of voluntary manslaughter, ultimately informing the judge that they could not reach a unanimous verdict. The indecisiveness pertaining to the voluntary manslaughter allegations eventually led to mistrial in June 2024. Since then, new developments have emerged in David Swift's case. His ex-wife, Kelly Essman, has come forward with allegations that he stalked her. During an appearance on 20 to 20, Kelly revealed that she met David on a dating site 3 years after Karen's death, and the two married in 2016. In October 2024, the Tennessee Court of Appeals denied a motion for David's legal team to dismiss the voluntary manslaughter charge in Karen's case, to which he pleaded not guilty. This charge will be revisited in a new trial. David remains in custody, awaiting trial on the voluntary manslaughter charge, while also facing separate stalking charges brought by his ex-wife in Alabama. The complexities of both these cases are being examined as all those involved seek justice. Still with me? Good, that means you're ready for the rest. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more cases just like this one. In July 2023, police arrive at a home after a disturbing tip. A man's life is in danger. His wife, Lindsay Shiver, is accused of plotting his murder. The evidence? A WhatsApp message sent to her lover with 2 words: kill him. Lindsay Shirley was born to her parents, Andy and Cecilia, on October 8, 1986, in Dorothy City, Alabama. She had 2 brothers, Brandon and Craig. Growing up in Alabama, Lindsay had a typical Southern girl childhood. Pageants were a huge part of the culture where Lindsay lived. Lindsay performed in beauty pageants all over the state. By the time Lindsay was 19, she was crowned Miss Houston County in Alabama, and was once runner-up for the National Peanut Festival, where she was adorned with a crown with a shiny peanut. With her glossy blonde hair and bright eyes, it was no surprise Lindsay was racking in the awards. In 2006, Lindsay enrolled in Auburn University, a prestigious college in Alabama, where she studied elementary education with aspirations to become a teacher. Lindsay seemed to be on a promising path. During her time at Auburn University, Lindsay was popular and had many friends. As a member of the cheerleading team, she embodied the spirit of the Tigers, cheering on her beloved team. Lindsay loved attending exercise classes. It was at one of these exercise classes that Lindsay met Robert Shiver. Robert, a snapper for the Auburn Tigers football team, was known for his exceptional talent on the field. Initially, it seemed like a match made in heaven. The star football player and the head cheerleader. Their romance quickly blossomed, and before long, the two were spending every waking moment together. Robert Shiver, an aspiring athlete, had made a name for himself at Auburn. From his days as a walk-on to earning a 3-year scholarship and eventually being named team captain, he had accomplished great things. As his senior year approached, Robert's career was on the rise, and it seemed nothing could hinder his potential. Robert, driven by ambition and fueled by his financial success, decided to sign with the Atlanta Falcons as a free agent in 2010. After finishing school that same year, Lindsay and Robert became engaged and later married in 2011. To the outside world, the couple appeared to be the epitome of a picture-perfect life. They had 3 beautiful sons named Grayson, Landon, and Rhett. However, appearances can be deceiving. Robert's dream of becoming a professional football player came to a halt when he signed with the NFL's Atlanta Falcons. Although initially promising, his career took a turn for the worse when his contract was terminated. However, instead of wallowing in despair, Robert found success in the corporate world. He became the vice president of an insurance company, Senior Life, which earned him a substantial income. With Robert's thriving career, Lindsay was able to stay home and raise the couple's children. Their lavish lifestyle allowed them to indulge in the finest things in life. They belonged to country clubs, dined at prestigious restaurants, and traveled extensively, with the Bahamas being one of their favorite destinations. Robert's billionaire parents owned a home on a tropical island. In the realm of the wealthy and famous, Baker's Bay, Bahamas stands as an exclusive destination, attracting the elite with its luxurious private residences and opulent lifestyle. This island paradise, located off Abacoa, is renowned for its pristine beaches, tranquil waters, and VIP community. It is here where Robert and Lindsay, with their 3 sons in tow, would often escape to in their private jet. Robert and Lindsay's luxurious getaways would not have been possible without access to their private residence in the Bahamas and partial ownership of a private jet. This combination of resources gave them the freedom to shuttle their families to and from the island whenever they desired. With endless streams of money at their disposal, they enjoyed a life of luxury and privilege. Situated in Baker's Bay, the Bahamas' private residence owned by Robert's parents was a mere stone's throw away from the home of celebrities like Michael Jackson and Tom Brady. This exclusive island community is renowned for its high-profile residents, attracting the wealthy and famous from around the world. With its pristine beaches, turquoise waters, and lavish lifestyle, Baker's Bay truly serves as a paradise escape for those seeking privacy and exclusivity. Robert and Lindsay's frequent visits to Baker's Bay provided them with a perfect getaway from their busy lives. They could unwind amongst the tranquility of the natural surroundings, surrounded by like-minded individuals who shared their wealth and taste for the finer things. The family would often spend their days lounging by the pool, exploring the island, and enjoying the company of their fellow elite neighbors. The couple strived to maintain a perfect facade to the outside world. Robert and Lindsay portrayed themselves as a loving and happy family, enjoying their wealth and privilege. However, behind the smiles, dark clouds were brewing. Robert and Lindsay had been married for 10 years, but the spark in their relationship had seemingly faded. Lindsay, longing for a sense of adventure and excitement, found herself drawn to another man. His name was Terrence Badhill, a 28-year-old Bahamian. Their fateful meeting took place at Grabber's Bar and Grill, a hotspot located on Baker's Bay, the same island where the Shivers vacation home was. According to a close friend of Lindsay's, she had grown bored and dissatisfied with her marriage to Robert. On the other hand, Terrence represented something different and exciting to her. He filled a void in her life that she had long been yearning for. Though he suspected his wife of cheating on him, Robert decided to take matters into his own hands. He hired a private investigator to follow Lindsay to Baker's Bay, Bahamas, and document her every move. The investigator's efforts paid off, as he obtained incriminating photographs of Lindsay and her boyfriend, Terrence, together. Armed with the evidence, Robert confronted Terrence, expressing his gratitude for him taking care of his wife in a rather sarcastic tone. With the proof of his wife's infidelity in his possession, Robert grew increasingly frustrated by the situation. He realized that he had to put an end to their marriage and protect himself from any further humiliation. On April 5, 2023, Robert filed for divorce from Lindsay. In his court filing, Robert cited Lindsay's extramarital affair as the catalyst behind his choice. According to Robert, the betrayal was the last straw, pushing him to end their union. He requested the court not give Lindsay any alimony, arguing that she was able-bodied and could work. Robert also claimed that Lindsay had a marketing degree from Auburn University, implying that she had the means to support herself. Robert's demands didn't end there. He also asked for primary custody of their sons and possession of their Thomasville, Georgia home, the furnishings inside, and the car. But Lindsay had her own plans. One day later, on April 6th, she filed her own divorce paperwork with the court. In her divorce filing, Lindsay outlined the severity of Robert's behavior, alleging that he had not only physically abused her, but also emotionally and mentally tormented her. She stressed the importance of protecting herself and her children from his harmful actions. Lindsay countered Robert's claims about alimony by stating that she had been a stay-at-home mom for so many years that her job opportunities had dwindled. Lindsay argued that she had sacrificed her career advancement for the sake of her family, and therefore, Robert should be responsible for her debts beyond her means. In the midst of this ongoing legal battle, Robert alleged that Lindsay had engaged in an affair with Terrence Bethel. However, Lindsay was quick to defend herself, stating that her relationship with Terrence began only after she and Robert separated, and was legally condoned by him. Despite a decade of marriage and 3 children, Lindsay and Robert's once amicable relationship had deteriorated beyond repair. Their divorce proceedings were marked by intense bitterness, and the couple continued to live together in Thomasville, North Carolina, even though their romantic and friendly ties had long since been severed. As their divorce proceedings unfolded, Lindsay and Robert's animosity reached new heights. Despite their shared commitment to their sons, there was seemingly no compromise or willingness to find common ground. Their divorce proceedings were characterized by a deep-seated animosity that made any attempt at reconciliation futile. On July 16, 2023, Lindsay called to report an alleged physical altercation between the pair. However, when officers arrived on the scene, a different story emerged. Lindsay claimed that Robert had refused to let her take the private jet to the Bahamas to see her boyfriend. Robert stated that Lindsay and her boyfriend had been planning a trip to Key West, while he intended to utilize the private jet to the Bahamas with their sons. However, Lindsay suddenly changed her mind and decided to board the plane with them. Instead of Key West, she informed Robert that she would visit her boyfriend in the Bahamas. As a responsible husband and father, Robert refused to succumb to Lindsay's demands. He firmly maintained that he would not allow her to use the jet to visit another man. This refusal further fueled Lindsay's rage, leading her to escalate the situation. The police officers witnessed the pettiness of their argument, and it served as a catalyst for what was to come. As the night progressed, Lindsay found herself consumed by thoughts of vengeance. Unable to contain her rage any longer, she contacted her boyfriend, Terrence, via WhatsApp. In a shocking turn of events, she sent a photo of her husband with the words, "Kill him." 4 days after the incident at the couple's home, Grabber's Bar and Grill in Baker's Bay, Bahamas, was robbed. The thieves entered the establishment armed with determination and a tactical plan. They cut the power cables and turned off the generators, effectively stopping the security camera footage from functioning. This strategic move ensured that their illicit activities would remain hidden. As the detectives began their investigation into the robbery, they noticed a certain pattern emerging. The thieves displayed an uncanny knowledge of Grabber's Bar and Grill's inner workings. They knew the exact location to cut the wires and turn off the generator, indicating that they had previously conducted thorough reconnaissance. This theory led them to conclude that the robbery was an inside job, with the thief or thieves being employed by restaurant itself. Detectives questioned the staff and spoke to Terrence as part of their investigation. As they searched Terrence's phone, they discovered a startling piece of evidence: a WhatsApp message sent by his girlfriend, Lindsay, 4 days prior. In this message, Lindsay ominously wrote, "Kill him," a clear reference to her estranged husband, Robert. What started as a robbery investigation quickly turned into something much more sinister. According to the Bahamian police, Lindsay was allegedly involved in a plot to have Robert targeted and killed at his family's home in Baker's Bay. Robert, fearing for his life, immediately flew back to the United States with his 3 children. The allegation that Lindsay was plotting to have her husband killed is shocking and disturbing, to say the least. If these allegations are true, it would mean that Lindsay was planning to have her husband killed in front of or near their 3 children. This chilling thought is beyond belief, especially coming from a mother. However, it is important to remember that all parties in this case are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. On July 21st, Lindsay, Terrence, and Farron were arrested and taken to Nassau. The same attorney represented all 3 and has pleaded not guilty. In the aftermath of the arrests, Lindsay Schiffer found herself incarcerated at the infamous Fox Hill prison in Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. This prison, often referred to as unfit for humanity, houses not only general offenders but also maximum security risks, including serial killers. Shockingly, reports over the years have revealed numerous issues within the prison walls. Overcrowding, maggot infestations, rats, bed sores, and a lack of outdoor time are just a few of the problems that have plagued Fox Hill. The lack of basic amenities, such as toilet paper, adds to the inhumane conditions faced by the inmates. Now, put yourself in the shoes of Lindsay Schiffer, a woman who was used to living a life of luxury and privilege. Lindsay, a former beauty pageant contestant, found herself suddenly confined to a bleak and desolate environment. Having become accustomed to her private jet and several bathroom mini-mansions, the idea of using a bucket in place of a toilet must have been a truly shocking experience for her. How do you think Lindsay Schiffer felt about the conditions at Fox Hill? Was she able to maintain her composure and adapt to her new surroundings? It's impossible to really know what Lindsay's thoughts might be, but it's evident that being placed in a prison with such deplorable conditions would be challenging for anyone. Despite her privileged background, she would undoubtedly find the living conditions at Fox Hill to be a far cry from what she was accustomed to. On August 9, 2023, Lindsay Schiffer was released from Fox Hill Prison after posting a $100,000 bail. Her boyfriend, Terrence, and the other accused co-conspirator, Farron, were also granted bail, set at $20,000 each. As part of her release conditions, Lindsay Schiffer was required to wear an ankle monitor, check in at local police departments 3 times a week, and adhere to a curfew. These measures were put in place to ensure her compliance with the court's orders. Lindsay was required to hand over her passport to the United States Embassy, which effectively restricted her movements. She was also ordered to remain in the Bahamas until her next court date, scheduled for October 5, 2023. Upon her release, Lindsay spoke to the New York Post for an interview. Despite the severity of the situation, she expressed her struggle, saying, "It's been really rough." However, she declined to provide further details, citing the ongoing legal proceedings. During the October hearing, Lindsay's attorneys requested the judge to expedite the legal proceedings of her case, hoping to bring a swift resolution. However, the hearing was postponed until December, as the prosecution stated they had still not completed the voluntary bill of indictment. In December 2023, Lindsay pleaded with the judge to allow her to return to the United States to spend Christmas with her children in Alabama. Recognizing the emotional toll this situation had taken on the entire family, the judge ultimately relented. However, there were strict conditions attached to Lindsay's release. The judge ordered that Lindsay wear an ankle monitor at all times. This measure ensured that her movements were closely monitored, ensuring her compliance with the terms of her release. Additionally, she was not allowed to leave Alabama, except for any divorce or custody proceedings in Georgia. These restrictions were intended to protect her estranged husband, Robert, to maintain the integrity of the ongoing legal proceedings. Despite the initial restrictions, the judge did grant Lindsay a small measure of freedom. She was allowed to remain in the United States until her March 2024 trial. This concession provided some relief to Lindsay. Robert, on the other hand, sought to prevent Lindsay's return to the United States. He expressed his concerns to the judge, stating that he took the indictment seriously and was genuinely concerned about his safety. His fears were understandable, considering the serious nature of the charges leveled against Lindsay. Given the serious nature of the crimes against Lindsay, he had every right to be worried. The indictment against Lindsay was serious and painted a dark picture of her intentions. What do you think about Robert's fears? Were they justified? However, Lindsay's attorneys vehemently denied her involvement in any wrongdoing. He argued that the evidence presented in court proved her innocence. According to him, Lindsay was an innocent victim, falsely accused and unfairly targeted by Robert. With a trial on the horizon, the anticipation surrounding this case was palpable. As proceedings continued, the public awaited the outcome, eagerly following the latest developments. In January 2024, Lindsay alleged Robert was withholding access to their 3 sons. This claim sparked outrage and concern among Lindsay's family members and loved ones. Lindsay's attorneys stated that she had not been allowed contact with her children since she FaceTimed them at Christmas. To add insult to injury, Lindsay's attorneys alleged that Robert had cut her off from her financial resources. With limited access to money, Lindsay found herself in a vulnerable position, according to Lindsay's attorney. As the days passed, the trial loomed on the horizon. Lindsay's trial was scheduled to start on March 6, 2024, but fate had other plans. A judge in the Bahamas made the surprising decision to delay the trial until the summer. However, even this delay proved insufficient, as the trial was rescheduled yet again, this time to March 2025. While on bail and living in the United States, Lindsay appeared on Inside Edition and Good Morning America. These public appearances caught the attention of the justice. This blatant disregard for the legal proceedings enraged the judge, who ordered Lindsay to return to the Bahamas and to Fox Hill Prison. The judge also revoked Lindsay's bond. She was accused of violating her bail conditions by moving from her designated address at her parents' house in Alabama without approval. Robert, now seemingly free from the clutches of death, has found solace in the arms of reality television star Savannah Crisley. Savannah Crisley is an American reality television star and entrepreneur. She rose to fame at a young age with her family on the hit reality show, Crisley Knows Best. The show follows the lives of Savannah, her brother Chase Crisley, and their parents, Todd and Julie Crisley. In a recent interview with People magazine, Savannah described her relationship with Robert as great and revealed that everything between them was awesome. Savannah's own family has been no stranger to legal troubles. Her parents, Todd and Julia Crisley, were once convicted and imprisoned for bank and tax fraud. The couple went public with their relationship in November 2023, sharing intimate moments on Instagram. With their newfound love, Robert Shivers and Savannah Crisley appear to be living happily ever after. As the case continues to unfold, only time will tell what fate awaits those involved. On April 22, 2024, at 9:35 a.m., a 911 dispatcher answered a chilling 911 call. A boy, just 10 years old, his voice trembling as he delivered a horrifying statement. His parents and 3 older brothers were dead. Police arrived at a home on Mirage Street to witness a scene that would leave them in disbelief. 5 members of the Candy family were lying on the floor, each victim of gunfire. The father, 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, was among the dead. But the investigation revealed something even more horrifying. Jonathan was the one who had pulled the trigger. Hi there, I'm Mark, and welcome to True Crime Stories. Today, we're examining the case of the Candy family, where investigators were left with chilling questions that refused to be answered. Why would Jonathan mercilessly murder his wife and 3 children, yet spare the life of his youngest son? The deeper they dug, the more baffling it became. There were no signs of domestic violence, no hidden feuds, no clues to explain this unimaginable horror. What could drive a man to such an unthinkable act? Let's take a look. The Candy family was a model American family, living in Yukon, Oklahoma. It included 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, his 39-year-old wife, Lindsay Terry Candy, and their 4 sons, 18-year-old Dylan Candy, 14-year-old Ethan Candy, 12-year-old Lucas Candy, and their youngest son, who was 10 years old. Jonathan Candy was a fun-loving guy who was a part-time worker at a Paycom center, which regularly hosted major sporting and entertainment events, and was the venue of the home games of the Oklahoma City Thunder. One of the family friends and Ethan's baseball coach, T.J. Armstrong, told the media that Jonathan was a great guy who always thanked others for everything and gave hugs. He said that the Candy family was a beautiful family with amazing souls and should only be remembered in good memories. Just like her husband, Lindsay Candy was also an entertaining person who knew how to meet people and keep the room's atmosphere lively. The same had been transferred to their children as well, who were just like their parents. It was because of their friendly and entertaining personalities that the Candy family was a favorite among friends, neighbors, and relatives. According to her Facebook and her childhood friend Cami Cruz, Lindsay was born and grew up in Prague, Oklahoma, and later moved to Yukon. Dylan Candy, the eldest son of the Candice, had recently graduated from Mustang High School in Yukon and was attending Oklahoma Baptist University for higher studies. Dylan had a passion for music and loved learning and playing different instruments. While at Mustang High, Dylan was a drummer in his school band. This love for music continued into university as well, where he was a member of the Bison Brigade. According to Dylan's teachers and friends at both school and college, he had a heart and was always willing to help others. The Candy family was full of talent, and the second child, the 14-year-old Ethan Candy, played baseball for Mustang North High School. His teammates and coaches liked him for his competitive spirit and leadership qualities. According to the coach, T.J. Armstrong, Ethan was his son's best friend and always brought positive energy to the team regardless of how easy or difficult the situation was. Lucas was also a smart kid who wasn't only good in studies but also loved playing outdoors and often participated in sports with his brother. According to Lucas' friends, he was always full of energy and affection. From the outside, things seemed normal in the Candy family. Everyone thought of them to be a happy family who shared a strong bond with each other and loved staying and having fun together. But not everything you see is always true, and this is exactly what happened on the 22nd of April, 2024. The youngest boy of the Candy family woke up as usual on the morning of April 22nd, 2024, expecting to have breakfast with his parents and brothers as usual. The boy couldn't hear what was happening outside his room because the fan was blowing air towards his bed. However, when he went out of his room around 9 a.m., it was a completely different scene. While there was complete silence in the house, the fire alarm rang briefly before going silent. It was unusual for Candy's family, and soon he discovered why. The house floor was full of bloodstains, and his parents and 3 brothers were lying dead in a pool of blood. What was even more shocking was that they had all been shot to death. In both panic and trauma, the boy dialed 911 from the phone. He reported to the police that his entire family had been murdered. The police officers and rescue workers could not believe their eyes when they arrived at the scene. Lindsay Candy and her 3 sons, Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas Candy, were all dead. As for the father, Jonathan Candy, he was also found with a gunshot to his head. Initially, the investigators thought that the Candy family had been murdered by an intruder. However, the truth was much more harrowing than that. Soon it was revealed that the man behind the massacre of the Candy family was none other than the father himself, Jonathan Candy. This was because a gun was found near his body. It was a scene that painted a sad story. After killing his wife and 3 sons, Jonathan shot himself and took his own life. When the word got out, relatives, friends, and neighbors could not believe that something that harrowing could happen to the Candy family. One of their neighbors, while talking to the media, said that Jonathan was always a happy and kind person, and that they couldn't believe that he killed his own family. Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas's friends were shocked at the news of their sudden deaths. The investigators had some key questions to find answers to after interviewing the people close to the Candy family. Why would Jonathan kill his wife and 3 children? And why would he spare the life of his youngest son? These questions puzzled the investigators even more when they couldn't find any signs of domestic violence or conflicts among the family members. The Candy family had always appeared closely knit. To find answers to key questions, the investigators in the case tried digging deeper into the personal lives of each member with special focus on Jonathan Candy, in an attempt to understand what might have been the reason behind such an extreme act. The investigation included a scrutiny of Jonathan's finances, his mental health, and his relationship with his wife and sons. For this, the police needed every possible clue they could get. So they searched the Candy family's home thoroughly, with a special focus on the room where the family was found dead. The crime scene was filled with blood, but there was no sign of resistance or struggle from the victims. But it also raised an important question. If other victims didn't struggle and the youngest son was sleeping in his room completely unaware of the situation, then why did Jonathan Candy spare his life, even though he could have easily killed him as well? While the police were unable to immediately answer this question, it was a key factor to be considered during the investigation. So the investigators began interviewing Jonathan's neighbors, colleagues, and family. When the investigators interviewed Jonathan's coworkers, they all had good things to say about their colleague. He was seen as someone who always created a happy and cheerful environment at work. None of the people at Jonathan's work told the police anything about him facing any emotional or mental crisis. One of his work friends told the police that he was always telling jokes and trying to make people around him feel comfortable. They also said that Jonathan was never angry at work or showed any signs of mental health problems that could lead to something as big as killing his own family and then taking his own life. One of Candy's neighbors, Bertram, also remembered him in good words while talking to the media after the incident. According to Bertram, Jonathan Candy always tried to help others in whatever capacity he could. While remembering a personal moment, Bertram told the media that Jonathan helped him fix his car and lawnmower once and even fixed ceiling fans for another neighbor. Bertram further shared that he was a very good friend of Jonathan Candy and never got even the slightest idea that there was something wrong between Jonathan and Lindsay. He also said that they both flew their drones together and never heard of any incident between him and his wife Lindsay. When the police started interviewing his family and close relatives, they started to see a different side of Jonathan and the Candy family. According to a family close to Lindsay Candy, she had recently opened up to them about the couple having arguments about their finances. None of those relatives expected that those arguments could lead to such a tragedy. But as for the police, it did raise a lot of questions about the exact nature of the relationship between Jonathan and his wife. The investigators now had a lead to follow: the Candy family's finances. And when they looked into them, the details discovered made this case even more complicated than before. Jonathan was the only breadwinner of the family, as his wife Lindsay was a housewife who looked after the 4 children. But he was only a part-time worker. As their sons grew, the family's living expenses also increased, and the records showed that the Candy family had several unpaid debts, which were a clear sign that they were facing financial struggles. From medical bills to bank loans and overdue credit card bills, the documents found in the Candy family's house made investigators believe that financial struggle might have been the one major reason why Jonathan took such a radical step. It was hypothesized that Jonathan may have given up on the pressure of providing for his family because he wasn't making enough as a part-time worker. When Jonathan's relatives were interviewed, some of them also shared that he had told them he was dissatisfied with his job and felt he hadn't accomplished anything considerable in his life. He also felt trapped in his role as a father and a husband, but knew that there was no way out of those burdens. The police knew they were going in the right direction, so they dug deeper into the marriage and marital strains between Jonathan and Lindsay Candy. While most of their friends and neighbors knew them as a happy couple, the family members close to the two told investigators that Jonathan and Lindsay had started to frequently argue in the months before the incident happened. Most of these arguments were about finances, and Lindsay had shown her concern about the future to several family members. The debts were piling up, and Jonathan felt he couldn't control the situation. This led to a major argument between Jonathan and Lindsay on the night before the tragedy. According to the relatives, this fight may have taken things over the line, to the extent that Jonathan lost control of himself and decided to kill not only his wife, but his 3 sons. In light of the interviews with Jonathan and Cindy's relatives, the investigation team was now trying to find answers to a new question. What exactly happened during the final minutes of the arguments that resulted in something as extreme as 5 deaths? While searching Jonathan Candy's workspace, the police found a diary that he had been keeping for months. The content of the diary was disturbing, as it revealed frustrations, abandonment, and disorientation. In one of the entries, Jonathan wrote that he felt he wasn't respected by his wife and was no longer the man his family needed. At different points, he had also written about the darkest thought of giving up on everything and had expressed his frustration about his family's future. The contents of Jonathan's diary were a clear sign that Jonathan Candy was facing a serious mental health crisis before the tragic incident. However, he did not mention it to anyone or try to get help. Dr. Joni Johnston, a forensic psychologist, was called by the police to study Jonathan's behavior and thoughts from what had been found about him through the evidence and the interviews. Dr. Johnston's report revealed that Jonathan may have suffered from severe depression and psychosis, but he kept it all to himself and pretended to be a strong and humorous man who loved having fun and making others laugh. The report also said that depression in men is different from women, as men are less likely to share negative emotions. She wrote that such men hide their pain, which leads to sudden emotional outbursts and lose control over themselves. The psychologist's findings also revealed that Jonathan may have suffered from mental health problems for a long time without asking any of his friends or family for support. As a result of these findings, Jonathan's diary was studied even more closely by the police. Each entry revealed increasingly negative thoughts of Jonathan about his family life and his role. This made one thing clear. As cheerful and fun-loving as Jonathan was from the outside, he was carrying a massive psychological burden on the inside. The report by forensic psychologists explained that for most men suffering from depression, it is difficult to seek help as it often shows them as vulnerable. Social expectations add to the pressure as everyone expects them to be the pillars of their family who can provide for them financially. This makes men feel that they cannot fail. The police also started looking at other factors that might have contributed to Jonathan's condition. These included societal pressure on him to fulfill his role as a father and breadwinner for his family. So why was the youngest son left unharmed by Jonathan? Was it because of last-minute remorse? Or did the two share a special bond that Jonathan didn't feel with his wife or his other 3 sons? The investigators are still trying to find the answer to that question but haven't reached a clear conclusion. A few days after the incident, Ethan's baseball team, Mustang Misfits, arranged a gathering in his memory in which Rhonda Armstrong, the baseball coach's wife, said that she was in complete disbelief after seeing the news because her son and Ethan were best friends and their family had known the Candy family for 3 years. She shared with the local news channels that the souls of each of the victims always radiated brightness. She also shared that the Candy kids and their parents were always smiling and laughing, and always made her forget all her troubles as soon as she saw their smiles. According to Rhonda, they were the kindest, sweetest, best people she had come across in her whole life. Cami Cruz, Lindsay Terry Candy's friend, took to Facebook and posted about her memories and friendship with Lindsay. She wrote that it was devastating and unimaginable to hear about the news of one of her closest friends. She further wrote that she had been in tears and didn't know how to process the news because Lindsay was loved by everyone and was special to so many people. Cruz's post said that her friend brought laughter and joy to every conversation she was a part of and was the light in her mother and father's life. Since both Rhonda's and Lindsay's sons were on the school's baseball team, this brought them together. Rhonda told the media that Lindsay always treated her son Cooper as her own and was the kind of person who would give you the shirt off her back. Dylan Candy was also missed by family and friends after the tragic incident. According to TJ Armstrong, Dylan never missed any of Ethan's baseball games and always made sure that his younger brother was at practice. Becky Young Horton, one of his choir teachers from middle school, wrote in a Facebook post that Dylan was an incredible young man who had a big heart. Brian Stackhouse, Oklahoma Baptist University's director of athletic bands, told the media that Dylan was an extremely talented drummer and was placed on the more complex first base as soon as he joined the Bison Brigade, the college's marching band. He further added that Dylan was a delight to work with and was someone who always stayed happy. Even if he was having a rough day, he would still make sure to be friendly to the people around him and was a great example of working through hard situations, perseverance, and dedicating oneself to something greater. Stackhouse also told the media that Dylan Candy was a very social person and made friends easily wherever he went. The OBU's athletic band director said that one of the favorite moments of Dylan's brief stay at the university and with Bison Brigade was when, in August 2023, the drummers were rehearsing their drumline cadence for the first time at band camp and he didn't know it also included a solo for him. After the tragic incident, the Bison Brigade announced that it would retire Dylan's bass drum and uniform, and a memorial was also planned for the floor where the band department resides on campus. Ethan Candy was in 9th grade at Mustang High and was part of the Mustang Youth Sports baseball team, which meant the Candy family was always at his practices and games. In a post on social media, the league Ethan played in, Ethan Candy was described by coaches as an amazing kid who could always make one laugh no matter how tough someone's day had been. Soon after joining the baseball team, Ethan Candy and Cooper Armstrong, TJ Armstrong's son, became best friends. According to the baseball coach, the main reason behind Ethan and Cooper's strong bond was that they both were funny and always stayed positive. Their teammates called them twins because they never separated and were close to each other. TJ Armstrong called Ethan his sweet little candy man. He told the media that Ethan was a candle who was constantly smiling and laughing and made his son happier. According to the coach, the Mustang Youth Sports baseball team was working on setting up a memorial bench for Ethan Candy at the Mustang High School. Lucas Candy, who was in 6th grade at Meadowbrook Intermediate School, was the youngest victim of the tragedy. According to family and friends of the Candy family, he was called Luke and was mostly seen playing with younger siblings of other baseball players during Ethan's practice games. TJ Armstrong, while talking to the media about Lucas Candy, shared that he was a happy kid, kind and smart, and was always running up and down the bleachers or playing in the dirt during his brother's games. All that is left of the Candy family is the youngest son of Jonathan and Lindsay. It is difficult to understand the extent of psychological trauma the kid went through and is going to go through, keeping in view his whole life completely changed in a matter of a few hours. The child will need therapy, but he isn't the only one who has been destroyed by the tragic incident and his family. The people close to the Candy family have also been devastated by the incident that has changed the Yukon community for years to come. Brian Stackhouse, Oklahoma Baptist University's director of athletic bands, while talking about Dylan Candy, shared a list of resources for his band students and encouraged his students to seek help whenever they need it. In the past, there have been similar cases where one member of the family killed the rest of the members because of mental health problems. They all had one thing in common with Jonathan Candy. They were all facing the crisis of making ends meet for their families, and financial problems were one of the main reasons behind their emotional outbursts. One such case was of John List, who, on November 9, 1971, killed his entire immediate family. He first shot to death his 47-year-old wife, Helen, and his 84-year-old mother, Alma, while his kids were at school. Once his younger children, the 16-year-old Patricia and 13-year-old Frederick, came back from school, John List killed them too. He didn't stop there, but rather went to his elder son, John Frederick's soccer game, drove him home after the game, and then shot him as well. When the police investigated the case, it was discovered that the major driver behind List's actions was the financial struggles he faced after getting laid off from his job at the Jersey City Bank. He thought it was too humiliating for him to share the news with his family, so he continued with the same routine of getting up early and going to his job, which he no longer had. As time passed, the List family's financial problems worsened, and at one point he had to divert money from his mother's bank account to avoid default on his mortgage payment. A psychologist appointed by the court testified that when List lost his job, he had two options: either accept welfare for his family or kill them to end everything, and he chose the second option. This was because registering his family for welfare also seemed a humiliating option, the very reason why List killed his family. When the court convicted John List of 5 counts of first-degree murder on April 12, 1990, he denied direct responsibility for his actions, and told the judge that his mental state made him do what he did. He was sentenced to 5 terms of life imprisonment, and even filed an appeal on grounds that he decided to kill his family because his judgment had been impaired by post-traumatic stress disorder, but the court rejected his appeal and upheld his conviction. According to Master Sergeant Gary Knight of the Oklahoma City Police, the police stopped investigating the case further after knowing Jonathan Candy's mental health caused the incident. The tragedy of the Candy family is as harrowing as it can get. It happened because the head of the family, Jonathan Candy, was suffering from depression and serious mental health problems. Jonathan's decision to not share his mental health condition with anyone resulted in the tragic killing of his wife and 3 sons, who had their whole lives in front of them and had nothing to do with Jonathan's mental state. It also leaves the youngest son with a trauma that will be hard to forget for a long time to come. On November 20, 2018, An English backpacker named Grace Mullane arrived in New Zealand on a 2-week trip after spending a month and a half in South America. But just 10 days after she landed in Auckland, she suddenly disappeared, leaving her loved ones concerned. What initially began as a search for a lost tourist became a homicide investigation, and the details that followed were harrowing. A man named Jesse Kempson was arrested and charged with murdering Grace Mullane. How did Grace meet Kempson? Why did he kill her? And how did the authorities reach him? Watch this video until the very end to find answers to all these questions and discover shocking details about the case of Grace Mullane. Hi there, I'm Mark. Welcome to True Crime Stories. Today we're looking at a story that captured headlines around the world. A case that began as a young woman's adventurous backpacking trip soon spiraled into something far darker. Grace Mullane had come to New Zealand to explore its stunning landscapes and culture. But within days of her arrival, she vanished. What started as a search for a missing tourist soon turned into a haunting investigation, uncovering a string of disturbing clues that led authorities down a chilling path. What came next were twists, hidden truths, and a trial that revealed details even seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend. This is the case of Grace Mullane. Grace Emmy Rose Mullane was born to David and Julian on the 2nd of December, 1996 in Wickford, Essex, England. She was the youngest of 3 siblings and shared a very close bond with her parents and her 2 older brothers. Being brought up in a down-to-earth family, Grace was a humble, caring, and fun-loving girl who was loved by everyone in her family and friends. After attending St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School, Brentwooderson Covenant High School, and St. Thomas More High School, Grace Mullane went to the University of Lincoln for higher studies. There she graduated with a degree in advertising and marketing. Throughout her educational career, Grace was a popular kid among her peers because of her personality, confidence, and outgoing nature. It was because of her full-energy nature that, in 2018, she took a gap year after graduating and decided to explore the world on her own as a backpacker. Grace had a high school boyfriend when she started university, but the couple broke up in the first year of college. Grace was an independent and confident single woman and openly discussed her sex life with her friends. According to people close to her, she told them she had a particular interest in BDSM and enjoyed having rough sex. She had accounts on different social media platforms and was part of several fetish communities online. In her posts in those groups, Grace expressed her openness to experimentation. One of Grace's former sexual partners also told the media that Grace had practiced BDSM with them, but she was always very careful about the physical and psychological effects. Since Grace was open about her sexual likings, she often worried that her openness might lead her to trouble someday, as it made her vulnerable to sexual predators. And that is exactly what happened while she was on her backpacking trip in late 2018. But before we move further, if you had interests or likings that could land you in trouble, would you share them with your friends or keep them close to your chest? Let us know in the comments below. Grace was an extremely hardworking person and was passionate about art. She would frequently post her paintings on her social media and participate in art exhibitions. After exploring her passion for art, she wanted to experience traveling around the world alone. This is what led to her taking a year off from her routine and going on a solo world tour as a backpacker in October 2018. She used her savings to buy tickets and started off her trip from South America. Peru was her first destination. During her trip, Grace regularly posted about her activities on her social media and frequently talked to her family. She traveled to other South American countries as well and remained in the continent for 6 weeks before leaving for New Zealand in mid-November. According to her family, Grace was the most excited about exploring New Zealand during her trip and planned on going to Fiji and Australia too before ending her trip and returning home. On November 30th, 2018, Grace Mullane checked into a hostel for backpackers called Base Backpackers. Ever since breaking up with her high school boyfriend, Grace was active on Tinder, and that continued into her international trip too. On the night of her check-in into Base Backpacker, Grace matched with a man named Jesse Kempson on Tinder. She talked to Kempson over messages for a while before deciding to meet with him the next day, December 1st. While Grace agreed to meet him, she didn't like his advances. But eventually, Kempson persuaded her to meet him at the Sky City Hotel. At 5:30 p.m. on December 1st, Grace left her hostel and went to meet Kempson at Sky City. Since she was new to both the city and the country, Grace hoped she would have a fun night out, but things didn't go as planned. The next day, on the 2nd of December 2018, it was Grace's 22nd birthday. Since she was close to her parents, other family members and friends, her loved ones started sending her birthday messages as soon as the date changed. But there was no response from her, and this was unusual from a person who shared dozens of pictures from her activities with her friends and family every single day. When Grace's parents tried to reach out through calls, her phone was going straight to voicemail. Soon, her family knew something was wrong because it was unusual for Grace to miss calls or leave her phone unattended for long periods of time. The family kept trying her number for the next 2 days, but when no one received any response from Grace, they decided to contact the Auckland police. On December 5, 2018, Grace Mullane was reported missing, but the police didn't show much urgency to find her initially. The reason is that the police believe that Grace might have stayed with some newly made friends after a night out. Another assumption was that her phone might have died and she would contact her family soon. But when the authorities contacted Base Backpackers Hostel to get information about Grace Mullane, they were surprised to know that she hadn't checked in after December 1st, the day she left to meet Jesse Kempson. What was even more surprising was that all of Grace's belongings were still in the hostel. The Auckland police now expedited their search for Grace Mullane. They began gathering CCTV footage from the local bars, hotels, and restaurants. This is when the authorities discovered that Grace had last gone to Sky City to meet someone. The CCTV footage showed that Grace was approached by Kempson, confidently, but then he hugged her in an awkward manner. After the exchange of greetings, the two left the place and went towards Andy's Burger Bar. The footage obtained by the police didn't just capture Grace meeting Kempson, but also showed what happened in the following hours. In the bar, while enjoying their drinks, the couple looked as if they were having a good time, and Grace's actions didn't show any alarming signs. Both Grace and Kempson embraced each other on multiple occasions, and even kissed a few times. Fast forward to 9:40 p.m. on the same night, and the CCTV footage shows the couple heading towards Jesse Kempson's apartment. Grace looked extremely comfortable with her date, and it seemed as if the two had known each other for years. Their arms were wrapped around each other, showing the young couple had a good night out. Up until that point in the CCTV footage, everything seemed normal except one thing. While the couple was in the bar, Grace left her seat to use the restroom, and as soon as she left, Jesse Kempson immediately started going through her belongings in the purse that she had left on her seat. While on the date, Grace was in touch with her friend in England, Amina Ashcroft. While Amina's statements later revealed that Grace was having a good time with Kempson and liked her date, she also told her texts. It was clear that Grace was pretty drunk. Amina also revealed that while she saw some red flags in Kempson when Grace described him, she didn't say much because Grace was having a good time. Grace told her friend that she clicked with her date well, and in her last text, she told Amina that she would contact her tomorrow and let her know what happened next. Up until this point, the authorities didn't know exactly who Grace's date was, but when the police were going through Grace's social media, they noticed that soon after Grace returned from the restroom, a person named Jesse Shane Kempson commented on her Facebook profile picture, with the comment reading, "Beautiful, very radiant." That comment was what led the authorities to their suspect linked to Grace's disappearance. The 26-year-old Jesse Kempson was born on December 28, 1991, in New Zealand, and grew up in Wellington. His parents separated when he was 9, and afterwards he was mainly brought up by her father and his grandfather. The police investigation later revealed that Jesse had a volatile upbringing with trauma, the complete opposite of Grace's childhood. When his family and friends were interviewed, nobody seemed to like him, and almost everyone called him a compulsive liar. Jesse's stepbrother told the police that he was a pathological liar who loved having power over people. So much so that Jesse had even lied to some people that he was dying of cancer. His landlord told the police that he initially believed that Jesse was a top manager for a company called Woolworth and was making 6 figures a year. But that turned out to be a lie when the landlord found out that Jesse hardly left the apartment building, and it was the state benefits that were paying his rent. Jesse had lied to multiple people about his profession. Some people thought he was a successful businessman, while others believed he was a professional softball player. In reality, Jesse was working as a telephone sales operative. What was more interesting was that he was fired from his job for lying on the same day he met Grace Mullane. Immediately after connecting the dots and identifying Jesse Kempson, the authorities knew he was their person of interest, and there was some link between him and Grace's disappearance. The investigators went to Jesse's apartment building, but he wasn't there. After a while, he arrived at the building, but as soon as he saw the police, he hurriedly turned around and tried to hide his face from the officers. One of the officers spotted him and chased him as people stood by and watched. The police eventually caught up to Jesse and brought him in for questioning. When Jesse Kempson was asked about the events of the night Grace Mullane disappeared, he told the authorities that he met Grace at Sky City because he didn't know whether or not Grace was a real person, since a lot of catfishing also goes on Tinder. He further shared that when they ended the night, the couple gave each other a hug and a kiss and went their separate ways after agreeing to keep in touch with each other. The investigators didn't buy Jesse Kempson's stories because of the CCTV footage they had seen. According to the footage, Jesse and Grace got off an elevator and headed towards his apartment. When the authorities searched Jesse Kempson's studio apartment and looked into him through different sources, they discovered that he had an unusual personality. He was estranged from his family and also claimed to have been diagnosed with anxiety recently. What caught the investigators' interest was a post on Jesse's Facebook profile from a couple of weeks before he met Grace. In the post, he was extremely apologetic and asked for forgiveness from all the people he had wronged. In one of the sentences of the post, Jesse wrote that his arrogance and selfishness had affected his relationships with people in his personal life. Jesse seemed to have shown red flags to almost everyone who had interacted with him, including the girls he had dated. All of them described him as overbearing and controlling, even if he had just started seeing them. He initially portrayed himself as a sophisticated and well-dressed person but soon showed his true colors. He repeatedly asked his dates about their sexual experiences and tried to get as much personal information from them as possible. The authorities went through nearly 6 terabytes of data from the CCTV footage and closely looked at each and every one of Jesse Kempson's movements on the 2nd of December 2018, the day Grace Mullane was supposed to celebrate her 22nd birthday. The cameras in Jesse's apartment building captured him getting into an elevator at 8 a.m. on the 2nd of December. He was alone and went into the building's lobby before heading towards the atrium on Elliott. After a few minutes, he arrived at the atrium and went to the baggage section to get a suitcase. After that, he got some cleaning supplies before checking out. Around 11 a.m., Jesse Kempson went to a car rental company in Auckland and rented a red Toyota Corolla. Jesse's behavior throughout the day was unusual. The authorities were surprised to see that just a few hours after getting the suitcase and cleaning supplies, Jesse went out on a date with some girl, but it wasn't Grace Mullane. The police were able to get in touch with Jesse's Tinder date on the 2nd of December and interviewed him to get any information that might lead them to Grace Mullane. The girl told the authorities that throughout the date, Jesse Kempson had made her feel extremely uncomfortable. She also revealed that Jesse talked about buying a large duffel bag for sports equipment and even discussed the topic of murder with her. He told her that it was both interesting and crazy that one wrong move by a murderer could land them in jail for the rest of their life. Have you ever discussed a topic as bizarre and scary as murder on your first date with someone? Comment below and let us know. Jesse Kempson told his Tinder date that he knew a guy who had asked his girlfriend to have rough sex with him that involved strangulation and suffocation. He then revealed the experiment went wrong and the guy tried to revive the girl, but it was too late by then. Eventually, his friend was charged with manslaughter. While it was already disturbing enough for his date, Jesse went on with his story and told her that the police dogs can only sniff dead bodies buried more than 4 feet below the ground. By that point, it was clear to the woman that she wasn't on a date with the usual guy and immediately wanted to leave the date. When she was leaving, Jesse Kempson offered her a ride home, but she declined. Kempson was unfazed by what happened during the date and went on with his day as usual. He collected cleaning supplies and rented a rug cleaning machine. He told the employees of the rental company that he was renting the machine for red wine stains on his carpet. The CCTV footage showed that Jesse Kempson returned to his apartment building a little before 9 p.m. on December 2nd and took the cleaning machine to his apartment. Jesse was back in the building's elevator at 9:30 p.m., but this time with a trolley that had two seemingly heavy suitcases on it. He packed the suitcases in the trunk of his rental car before returning back to the lobby. Around 7 a.m. on December 3, 2018, Jesse Kempson went on another suspicious shopping trip where he bought a shovel. He then went to a dry cleaner and dropped off the suitcase before heading towards the car wash. The CCTV camera at the car wash showed Jesse power washing the car before returning it to the rental company. On December 5, 2018, CCTV cameras around the city captured Jesse Kempson dumping bags in different dumpsters in Auckland. On December 6, Grace's father flew to Auckland to help the authorities with the search for his daughter. He also pleaded with the public to help find his daughter. In a press conference with an official from Auckland Police, David Mullane understandably looked heartbroken and stopped on multiple occasions to regain his composure. The police official told the media that they had found a person of interest linked to Grace's disappearance. During his first interview with the Auckland law enforcement authorities, Jesse Kempson had told the investigators that he had last seen Grace Mullane at 10 p.m. on the 1st of December, when they said goodbye to each other and never saw her again. He also told the police that she had blocked him on Tinder afterward. When the authorities interviewed him again after a few days, Jesse's story had changed. During the second interview, he told them when the couple returned to his apartment, they were very drunk and started making out. He then told the officers that Grace suddenly turned the music down and started talking about 50 Shades of Grey and bondage. He said that after the talking was over, they started having sex, and after a while Grace told him that there were a few things that she liked doing during sex and had experienced with her ex-partner. After that, Grace started biting him and asked him to bite her as well. He asked her if she was sure about it, and she consented to it. Jesse continued with his story and told the authorities that Grace then spanked him and then held him around the neck and choked him. She then asked him to do the same to her. According to Jesse's version, the two of them were on the floor by the time they were finished having sex, and he then went to the bathroom to take a shower. He said he accidentally fell asleep in the shower, and when he woke up and came back to the bed. But since the room was dark, he couldn't see or feel Grace. He assumed she had left. But he was shocked when he woke up the next morning and found Grace lying on the floor with blood coming out of her nose. Jesse repeatedly insisted that they had just had violent sex and he hadn't murdered her. When the police searched Jesse Kempson's apartment, they found that the carpet was saturated with Grace's blood, which told a different story than the one Jesse had shared. When asked about Grace's body, he agreed to take the police to the spot where he had buried her. Grace Mullane's body was found in Waitakere Ranges, 12 miles west of Auckland at 4 p.m. on December 9, 2018. While talking to the media, Detective Inspector Scott Beard told the media about discovering Grace's body. He mentioned that they had found a body they believed to be of Grace, and that the formal identification process would be initiated. Although the identification process had not yet started, the investigators, based on the evidence that had accumulated over the past few days, determined that it was Grace's corpse. Detective Inspector Scott Beard also stated that this time would have been unbearable for the Mullane family, and sent condolences to them. Jesse Kempson made his first appearance in court on December 10, 2018, and was charged with murdering Grace Mullane. But his identity was suppressed because of an appeal by the defense that automatically triggered an interim name suspension for 20 working days. While the media outlets in New Zealand could not publish his name or other details, identity suppression could not be enforced outside New Zealand, and different English newspapers and channels published Jesse Kempson's name in their reports. On January 16, 2019, Jesse Kempson appeared in the Auckland High Court where he pleaded not guilty. His identity still remains suppressed pending an appeal by his lawyers. The Auckland High Court heard the appeal on February 7, 2019, and reversed its decision, indirectly ending Jesse Kempson's name suspension. The trial for Grace Mullane's murder began on the 4th of November, 2019, and the autopsy report presented in the court was horrifying and showed that Grace had been strangled. Not only that, she also had bruises on her arms and chest as if she had been pinned down. It was also revealed a pressure with considerable force was applied to Grace's neck for nearly 5 minutes, which led to her death. The police report also showed that Jesse had lied to the authorities during the investigation. On the night of December 1st, when Grace was murdered, Jesse didn't accidentally fall asleep in the shower. Rather, searched for the hottest fire, flesh-eating birds, and Whitaker ranges on his phone. But that wasn't the only thing he did on his phone. He even took intimate photos with Grace's dead body and browsed different porn sites. The prosecutors argued that Grace's death wasn't the result of rough sex gone wrong, but rather it was deliberate, intentional, and calm. The investigators also told the court that Jesse would have killed someone else if it wasn't Grace Mullane on the night of December 1st, 2018. On the 21st of February 2020, a jury consisting of 5 men and 7 women unanimously found Jesse Kempson guilty of the murder of Grace Mullane. He was sentenced to life in prison with a maximum non-parole of 17 years. On the 22nd of December 2020, Jesse Kempson was formally identified after New Zealand's Supreme Court rejected his appeal for continued name suspension. It was only then that the public knew that he had been convicted of a total of 9 charges that included sexual violation, rape, and threatening to kill. Grace Mullane's death attracted unrepentant public attention, and the Prime Minister of New Zealand publicly apologized to Grace's family. The Mullane family gave an emotional media statement after the court verdict came in. They stated that every member of the Mullane family and those who were friends with Grace would welcome the verdict of murder. They also emphasized the suffering they had endured over the past year and mentioned that the verdict, although welcomed, would not reduce their pain. Grace Mullane was killed around a year before the verdict was announced, and since then the entire family and lives of those within it were ripped apart. The brutal killing of Grace is one that will stick with the family for the rest of their lives, and Grace will forever be remembered as a beautiful, talented, and loving daughter. She was the family's sunshine, and she will be missed. That was the case of Grace Mullane. On December 6, 2009, Susan Cox Powell vanished from her home in West Valley City, Utah, leaving behind a trail of suspicion. Her spouse, Josh Powell, seemed to be the most likely suspect given the family affairs that were about to be revealed, as well as the heartbreaking ending for all the parties involved. It is imperative to note that the Susan Powell case is more than a woman's disappearance. It is a tale of betrayal leading to devastation. As authorities began to unravel the truth, they discovered troubling behaviors exhibited by Josh Powell, who became a person of interest almost immediately. Despite mounting evidence against him, Josh managed to evade charges until his shocking actions in 2012 changed everything. Susan Marie Cox was born on October 16, 1981, in West Valley City, Utah. She was raised in a family that was relatively warm and had a good attitude towards work and aspirations. Susan pursued a career as a cosmetologist and later worked for Wells Fargo Investments after relocating with her family. She was raised in a family belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this naturally shaped her beliefs and sociable nature. Joshua Powell was born on January 20, 1976, in Puyallup, Washington, to Stephen and Terica Powell. His childhood was marked by dysfunction. His parents divorced in the early 1990s due to Stephen's abusive behavior and disillusionment with the LDS Church. Reports indicated that Joshua exhibited troubling behaviors as a child, including animal cruelty and threats of violence. He attempted suicide at least once during his teenage years, indicating significant emotional distress. Joshua met Susan Cox in 1999 while attending an LDS Church Institute religion course in Tacoma, Washington. The couple began dating shortly after and married in April 2001 at Portland, Oregon Temple. Initially, their marriage appeared stable. However, financial struggles soon emerged as a significant issue for the couple. They lived with Joshua's father for a brief period after their wedding, which introduced complications due to Stephen Powell's inappropriate behavior towards Susan. As they settled into married life in West Valley City, Utah, the couple welcomed 2 sons, Charles in January 2005 and Braden in January 2007. Despite these joyful additions to their family, underlying tensions began to surface as Joshua's controlling behavior became more pronounced. The relationship between Susan and Stephen became increasingly problematic as Stephen developed an obsessive fixation on Susan. He engaged in disturbing behaviors, such as filming her without her consent and expressing inappropriate feelings towards her. This dynamic forced Joshua and Stephen to move out to distance themselves from Stephen's advances. However, the tension within the family persisted. Reports indicate that Stephen would follow Susan around the house and invade her privacy by spying on her while she used the bathroom or stealing personal items like underwear. This environment contributed to the strain on Susan and Joshua's marriage as they struggled with financial issues and Joshua's reluctance to attend church service with his family. In the years leading up to her disappearance, Susan documented her concerns about her marriage through journal entries and letters to friends. She expressed fears regarding Joshua's controlling behavior and noted threats he made about their future if she should. In a letter dated June 28, 2008, she warned that if something happened to her, it might not be an accident, even if it appeared that way. This documentation would serve as critical evidence in understanding the dynamics of their relationship and the potential dangers Susan faced. On December 6, 2006, Susan Cox Powell attended church services with her two sons, Charlie and Braden, at their local ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The family was known to be active members of the church community, which played a significant role in their lives. After the service, they returned home to their residence in West Valley City, Utah. This day began like any other, with no indications of the events that would soon unfold. In the afternoon, around 5 p.m., a neighbor visited the Powell house and observed Susan lying down for a nap after reportedly feeling unwell. This visit marked the last known sighting of Susan by anyone outside her family. After the neighbor left, there was no further communication from Susan. The timeline indicates that she was last seen alive shortly after this visit, creating a gap that would later raise concerns among her family and friends when she failed to appear at work the following day. At approximately 2:29 p.m. on December 6th, Susan made her last phone call to a friend. This call did not raise any immediate alarms, however. It would later be noted as a significant point in the timeline of her disappearance. The content of this call remains unclear, but it was an ordinary conversation that did not indicate any distress or unusual circumstances. This final communication would become critical in piecing together Susan's last known activities before she vanished. Later that evening, Josh Powell claimed that he took Charlie and Braden sledding after leaving Susan at home asleep. He stated they went on a camping trip to Simpson Springs Campground in a remote area of Utah's West Desert around midnight. This claim raised immediate suspicions, due to the freezing temperatures that night and the impracticality of camping with young children under such conditions. Additionally, neighbors reported seeing Josh return around 8:30 p.m., which contradicted his timeline of events regarding the camping trip. When police arrived at the Powell home later that evening, they found Josh with Susan's cell phone in his vehicle and several items that would later be scrutinized during the investigation. On the morning of December 7, 2009, Susan's absence was noted when she failed to drop off her sons, Charlie and Braden, at daycare. The daycare provider became concerned after not being able to reach either parent. After several attempts to contact Josh and Susan without success, the daycare provider contacted Josh's mother, Terica Powell, and his sister, Jennifer Graves. Alarmed by the situation, they went to the Powell home to investigate. Upon arriving, they found the house quiet and unresponsive. Given the circumstances and their inability to reach anyone inside, Terica and Jennifer decided to call the police. Their actions initiated a critical response from law enforcement as concerns grew that the family might be in danger. The West Valley City Police responded promptly to the call about the missing family. Upon arriving at the Powell residence, officers forced entry into the home due to concerns that the family may have been victims of carbon monoxide poisoning. Once inside, they discovered signs of a struggle. 2 box fans were blowing on a wet spot on the carpet, which raised immediate suspicions about what had transpired in the home. In addition to this unusual scene, Susan's purse, wallet, and identification were found inside, indicating she had not left voluntarily. The police noted these findings as critical evidence in their investigation. The absence of Susan and any indication of where she might be heightened their concerns regarding her safety. Later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., Josh Powell returned home with Charlie and Braden after claiming they had been sledding. Upon his return, he was greeted by police officers who were already investigating Susan's disappearance. During this encounter, officers discovered that Josh had Susan's cell phone in his vehicle, with the SIM card removed, a detail that raised further suspicion about his involvement in her disappearance. Additionally, police found several items in his vehicle that would later be scrutinized during the investigation: a generator, blankets, a gas canister, and tarps. These items were inconsistent with his claims of having taken the children sledding. During questioning at the West Valley City Police Department later that evening, Josh insisted he did not know where Susan was, and maintained that she was at home when he left her for the camping trip. However, inconsistencies in his statements began to emerge as investigators probed deeper into his account of events. Following Susan's disappearance, police conducted interviews with her eldest son, Charlie Powell. During the interview, Charlie stated that Susan had gone camping with them, but did not return home. This statement raised immediate concern among investigators regarding the accuracy of Josh's claims about their activities. Josh's account was crucial as it provided insight into the family's dynamics, and suggested that Susan was indeed with them during the night of her disappearance. Investigators recognized the need to assess the reliability of Charlie's statement further, given his young age and the potential influence of his father. As part of the investigation, law enforcement executed a search warrant at the Powell residence on December 9, 2009. During this search, they discovered blood evidence on the floor near a damp sofa where fans were blowing, indicating an attempt to dry the area. Subsequent DNA analysis confirmed that one blood sample matched Susan's DNA, while another sample was identified as coming from an unknown male contributor. Another key piece of evidence found during this search was Susan's letter, in which she had expressed concerns over the marriage, how there was no attraction between the couple, rather just infighting. This was the same letter where Susan had stated that if something were to happen to her, it wouldn't be an accident. Her husband and his family would be responsible. These pieces of evidence significantly shifted the focus of the investigation toward Josh Powell, as it contradicted his narrative that Susan had simply vanished without a trace. In the days following Susan's disappearance, Josh Powell exhibited several behaviors that raised suspicions among investigators. He withdrew large sums of money from Susan's retirement accounts using a power of attorney form and canceled her scheduled chiropractic appointments. Additionally, friends reported that Josh had previously discussed methods of disposing of a body, specifically mentioning abandoned mine shafts in Utah's West Desert as potential locations. These actions and statements contributed to the growing belief among investigators that Josh may have been involved in Susan's disappearance, and raised questions about his intentions during this critical period. To make matters worse, Josh Powell took his sons, Charlie and Braden, and moved in with his father, Stephen Powell, in Seattle. This arrangement raised concerns due to Susan's previous warnings about Stephen's inappropriate behavior and her desire to keep her children away from him. Despite these concerns, Josh chose to live with Stephen, which further complicated the investigation into Susan's disappearance. Police suspected that Josh Powell's brother, Michael, may have helped dispose of Susan's remains after cadaver dogs detected human decomposition in his trunk. Investigators gathered evidence, but were unable to definitively link Michael to Susan's disappearance. In 2013, Michael Powell committed suicide, raising further questions about the family's involvement in the case. Following Susan's disappearance, Stephen Powell, Josh's father, conducted a smear campaign against her, claiming she had run off with another man. This behavior drew scrutiny from investigators, who examined Stephen's past and uncovered his obsession with Susan. Evidence revealed that Stephen had engaged in inappropriate conduct toward her, and had made several disturbing remarks about her after she went missing. His actions contributed to the complex dynamics surrounding the investigation into Susan's disappearance. In 2011, Stephen Powell, the father of Josh Powell, was arrested for voyeurism and possession of child pornography. The arrest stemmed from an investigation into Stephen's inappropriate behavior following the disappearance of his daughter-in-law, Susan. Law enforcement executed a search warrant at Stephen's home in Puyallup, Washington, where they discovered numerous images and videos of women taken without their consent. Among the materials seized were explicit photographs of Susan, which raised significant concerns about his obsession with her. The evidence collected during the arrest revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that included stalking and harassment. This information brought renewed media attention to Susan's case and intensified scrutiny of the Powell family dynamics. Investigators began to reassess Stephen's potential involvement in Susan's disappearance, considering his proximity to the family and his known fixation on her. As details of the charges emerged, concerns about the safety of Charlie and Braden intensified. Susan had previously expressed fears about her children being around Stephen due to his past behavior. Following his arrest, authorities faced pressure to ensure the boys were protected from any potential harm associated with their grandfather. As police scrambled to locate any signs of Susan, custody proceedings regarding Charlie and Braden Powell began too. Despite Susan's parents, Chuck and Jody Cox, pleading against granting custody to Josh, the state allowed him visitation rights. Concerns about Josh's behavior and the circumstances surrounding Susan's disappearance did not prevent the court from permitting these visits. Following Stephen Powell's arrest on child pornography charges in 2011, the situation changed significantly. The state intervened and took custody of Charlie and Braden, removing them from Josh's care due to the serious allegations against their grandfather and ongoing investigations into their mother's disappearance. This decision was made in light of the potential risks to the children's safety given the family dynamics. Legal battles ensued over the custody of the children amid these developments. Susan's parents sought to gain permanent custody, arguing that Josh posed a threat to their grandchildren due to his association with Stephen and his questionable behavior following Susan's disappearance. The court proceedings highlighted the complexities of the case, as investigators continued to gather evidence related to Susan's fate while also addressing the immediate welfare of Charlie and Braden. Throughout this period, public interest in the case remained high, with media coverage focusing on both the custody disputes and the unresolved questions surrounding Susan's disappearance. The ongoing legal struggles underscored the challenges faced by law enforcement as they attempted to navigate the investigation while ensuring the safety of the children involved. On February 5, 2012, a supervised visit was scheduled for Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden, with social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall. The visit took place at Josh's home in Graham, Washington. During the visit, Josh locked Elizabeth out of the house shortly after she arrived. This action raised immediate concerns regarding the safety of the children. Once outside, Elizabeth attempted to gain entry, but was unable to do so. While she waited for law enforcement to arrive, Josh set his house on fire using a flammable liquid. The fire quickly engulfed the home, and emergency responders were called to the scene. Tragically, Charlie and Braden died from carbon monoxide poisoning as a result of the fire. Investigators later found evidence indicating that both children had sustained injuries, suggesting that they were attacked before the fire was set. A hatchet was recovered near Josh's body, indicating that he may have used it to inflict these injuries. Authorities confirmed that the explosion was deliberate and treated the case as a double murder-suicide. Local authorities reported that Josh's actions appeared premeditated, as he had withdrawn several $1,000s from his bank account shortly before the incident, and had contacted friends via email to say goodbye. Additionally, he had donated his children's toys and books to local charities just a day prior. Following the incident, investigators uncovered that 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline had been found on the premises, along with evidence that gasoline had been spread throughout the house. This discovery reinforced suspicions that Josh intended to destroy both himself and his children in a calculated act. When authorities notified Stephen Powell, who was incarcerated at the time, he reportedly did not seem very upset by the news, but expressed anger towards those who had informed him. 2 weeks later, Stephen invoked his Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions regarding Susan's disappearance, raising further suspicion about his knowledge of the events. The incident prompted a thorough review of the social services involved in overseeing visits between Joshua and his children, highlighting potential failures and safeguarding measures that could have prevented this tragedy. Following the tragic event involving Josh Powell and his 2 sons, investigators delved into the circumstances that led to his drastic actions. The aftermath revealed a complex interplay of legal pressures, psychological evaluations, and troubling family dynamics that contributed to a narrative suggesting that Josh may have felt cornered. Josh was under significant legal scrutiny due to the ongoing investigation into Susan's disappearance. He faced custody battles concerning Charlie and Braden, which added considerable stress to his situation. Authorities had ordered him to undergo psychological evaluations as part of the custody proceedings, reflecting concerns about his mental stability and parenting capabilities. These evaluations aimed to assess his fitness as a parent amid allegations of controlling behavior and potential involvement in Susan's disappearance. They became critical in understanding his state of mind leading up to the incident. The family dynamics within the Powell household were troubling. Josh's relationship with his father, Stephen Powell, raised red flags due to Stephen's inappropriate behavior and obsession with Susan. Investigators noted that Stephen had conducted a smear campaign against Susan after her disappearance, claiming she had run off with another man. This hostile environment likely influenced Josh's action and mindset. In the months leading up to the incident, Josh engaged in suspicious behavior that further alarmed investigators. Him withdrawing large sums of money from Susan's accounts and canceling her future appointments were enough to raise questions about his intentions. As soon as he was given the power of attorney over Susan's assets, he stopped cooperating with the law enforcement authorities and ran off to Seattle to spend Christmas with his kids. To make matters worse, he made statements about disposing of a body and mentioning abandoned mine shafts as potential locations for hiding remains. This raised further suspicions regarding his involvement in Susan's disappearance. Following the incident, investigators focused on all of these aspects leading up to the fire. Evidence suggested that he may have felt cornered by legal pressures and the impending loss of custody of his children. Josh's suicide left many questions unanswered regarding Susan's fate and the extent of family involvement in her disappearance. Do you think Josh was responsible for Susan's disappearance alone? Or were any of his family members involved? Despite Josh's death, law enforcement continued to investigate leads related to Susan's disappearance. They examined evidence from Powell's home and surrounding areas, but the absence of a body complicated the case. Nonetheless, suspicion remained surrounding Josh and potentially other family members as investigators sought to piece together the events leading up to Susan's disappearance. On February 11, 2013, Michael Powell took his own life by jumping from the roof of a parking garage in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This tragic event occurred approximately 1 year after the deaths of his brother Josh and Josh's two sons, Charlie and Braden. Prior to his suicide, Michael had been questioned multiple times by police in 2012 after his abandoned Ford was discovered at an Oregon wrecking yard. Authorities described him as evasive regarding the circumstances surrounding his vehicle. Following the deaths of Josh and the boys, Utah authorities speculated that both Joshua and Michael were accomplices in the murder of Susan Powell. Investigators noted suspicious behaviors from both brothers during their inquiries into Susan's disappearance, leading to ongoing speculation about their involvement. Michael's death added another layer of complexity to the investigation, leaving many questions unanswered regarding the family's role in Susan's fate. On July 1, 2013, the West Valley City Police officially closed their active investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance. This decision followed extensive inquiries and the tragic deaths of Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden. Despite the closure, the case remained a focal point of public interest and speculation as many questions about Susan's fate lingered. The police maintained that they believed Josh was involved in her disappearance, but without evidence or a body, the investigation could not proceed further. In February 2013, Manley, who conducted psychological evaluations of Josh Powell for Washington authorities, acknowledged his suspicions regarding Joshua's involvement in Susan's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Manley did not include suspicions in his official reports because they were beyond the scope of his duties, and because Josh had not been charged with any wrongdoings at that time. In March 2015, Chuck Cox won a court battle against Terica and Alina Powell over the control of Susan's estate. Terica and Alina sought to have Susan declared legally dead to collect life insurance benefits. Ultimately, Chuck gained full control of the estate, ensuring that Susan's assets would be managed in a manner consistent with her family's wishes. The Cox family filed a lawsuit against Washington's Department of Social and Health Services and its social workers, alleging that they prioritized Joshua's potential rights over the safety of Charlie and Braden. In 2015, a federal court ruled in favor of the defendants, granting immunity to the social workers and finding DSHS not negligent. However, in 2019, an appeals court allowed claims of DSHS negligence to proceed to trial, leading to a jury ruling that DSHS was negligent in awarding $98 million to the estates of Charlie and Braden Powell. Following the tragic events surrounding Susan's estate, the Cox family actively pressured lawmakers in Washington and Utah to pass legislation restricting visitation rights to parents under investigation for murder. Their advocacy efforts aim to enhance protections for children in similar situations, reflecting their commitment to preventing future tragedies stemming from inadequate oversight and custody cases. Do you think the court should stop parents from visiting their children if accused of murder? Despite the absence of Susan Powell's remains, it is widely believed that she was murdered by her husband Joshua. As of March 2018, there have been calls to declare her legally dead with homicide as the cause. In early 2022, a cave exploration crew searched a mine shaft in Utah for Susan's remains, discovering rib bones and scraps of clothing. However, DNA tests confirmed none belonged to her, identifying them instead as animal remains. Additionally, pants recovered tested positive for male DNA, and efforts are ongoing to identify this individual. The investigation into Susan's disappearance remains open-ended, with no charges filed against Joshua due to his death in 2012. The case continues to prompt discussions about legal reforms aimed at protecting children in similar situations. So, what do you guys think? Is Susan alive? And if she was killed by her husband, what happened to her body? Where did they go? On February 24, 2023, at approximately 7:40 a.m., a 911 call comes in from a home in Herndon, Virginia. The dispatcher hears only muffled moans before the line cuts off. 15 minutes later, another call. A man claims he shot an intruder attacking his wife. When officers arrive, they find a horrific scene. A woman stabbed multiple times and a man dead from 2 gunshots. What begins as a case of home invasion suddenly turns into a web of deceit, manipulation, and murder. Hi, I'm Mark, and welcome to True Crime Stories. Today, we're looking at the case of Juliana Perez Magalhaes and the Banfield family, a case of betrayal, manipulation, and murder where investigators uncovered forensic evidence, digital footprints, and personal connections that raised more questions than answers. Why would a husband conspire with a family nanny to kill his own wife, the mother of his daughter? Who was the intruder, and what did he do to deserve to die? The deeper they dug into the lives of those involved, the more complicated the story became. Let's take a look. Juliana Perez Magalhaes was born in Brazil and raised by her mother, who worked as a house cleaner. At age 21, she moved to Virginia as part of a cultural exchange program. This program allowed her to work as an au pair, providing childcare and cultural exchange with an American family. In late 2021, Juliana began her employment with Brendan and Christine Banfield as a live-in nanny. Her responsibilities included caring for the couple's young daughter and assisting with household duties. As she settled into her role, Brendan started taking interest in her, and over time, their relationship would go on to extend beyond professional boundaries. This development would later play a crucial role in the events that unfolded. Brendan Banfield was born in February 1985 and has worked as an IRS agent since 2009. His role involved significant responsibilities, including handling of sensitive financial investigations. Christine Banfield, born in September 1985, was employed as a pediatric ICU nurse, a position that required extensive medical knowledge and emotional resilience. The couple had one daughter, born in 2018, who was the focus on their family life. In 2019, Brendan and Christine moved from Long Island, New York, to Herndon, Virginia. They purchased a 5-bedroom home for $799,000, which provided ample space for their growing family. The Banfields' decision to relocate and invest in a larger home reflected their commitment to establishing a stable environment for their daughter. On February 24, 2023, at 7:47 a.m., The first 911 call was placed from the Banfield residence in Herndon, Virginia. The call was made by Juliana, but communication was unclear. The dispatcher could only hear moaning on the line before the call abruptly ended. Just 15 minutes later, at 8:02 a.m., a second call was made. This time, Juliana requested assistance, and Brendan Banfield came onto the line, claiming he had shot an intruder who attacked his wife. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered Christine Banfield, age 37, in the master bedroom. She had sustained multiple stab wounds to her upper body. Not far from her, Joseph Ryan, age 38, was found dead from gunshot wounds, one to the head and one to the chest. Christine was transported to a hospital in the hope that her life could be saved. However, shortly after arriving at the hospital, she was pronounced dead. Joseph Ryan was already pronounced dead at the scene. Following the tragic events of February 24, 2023, investigators began to scrutinize Juliana's account of the morning. Juliana claimed that she had left the Banfield residence shortly after Brendan departed for work, intending to take the couple's daughter of 4 years to the National Zoo. However, she stated that she returned home after realizing she had forgotten the packed lunches in the refrigerator. This narrative raised suspicions among detectives due to its timing and the circumstances surrounding her return. As Juliana approached the house, she observed an unfamiliar vehicle parked in the driveway and saw a man entering the home carrying a bag. This observation was pivotal. It indicated that someone unexpected was inside the residence at the time. Juliana attempted to contact Christine Banfield, but received no answer. She then called Brendan to inform him of her observations, prompting him to return home. Upon Brendan's arrival, he and Juliana entered the house together with their daughter. Juliana placed the child in the basement for safety before following Brendan upstairs. When they reached the master bedroom, they discovered Joseph Ryan leaning over Christina Banfield, holding a knife to her throat. This alarming scene led Brendan to draw his service weapon and shoot Joseph Ryan once in the head. After this initial shot, Brendan instructed Juliana to retrieve a Glock semi-automatic pistol from a gun safe in the bathroom. Juliana complied and fired a single shot at Joseph Ryan, claiming uncertainty about whether she hit him. However, forensic evidence later confirmed that her shot did strike him in the chest. The conflicting accounts provided by both Juliana and Brendan raised significant doubts among investigators. Their narratives contained inconsistencies regarding their actions and observations during critical moments leading up to the shooting. As the detectives got deeper into these discrepancies, they began to question the authenticity of their claims, setting the stage for further investigation into the events that morning. One important question that needed answering was who was the intruder Joseph Ryan, and what was his purpose for visiting the Banfield residence? So investigators on the case started digging up information to find any links between the two parties. What they found out as a result of the investigation made the entire case more complex. Joseph Ryan was an active user of FetLife, an online BDSM community. He would often utilize this platform to connect with others who shared similar interests. Under the surname Taco Supreme 7000, he engaged in various discussions, sharing his experiences and preferences related to kink and alternative sexual lifestyles. His profile indicated a willingness to explore unconventional relationships, which was a significant aspect of his life. Investigators later uncovered that Ryan had been communicating with a user named Anastasia9, a profile that featured Christine Banfield's photo as the profile picture. This interaction would prove critical to understanding the events leading up to the tragic incident at the Banfield residence. The messages exchanged between Ryan and Anastasia9 suggested he was lured into a situation under false pretenses. Ryan believed he was meeting Christine Banfield for a consensual encounter, but evidence indicated that this was not the case. The profile of Anastasia9 was maintained on Christine Banfield's computer, which raised immediate red flags for investigators. Investigators had to first make sure whether it was Christine operating this profile or was it someone impersonating her. Hence, they decided to match the content to the conversations between Ryan and Anastasia. To everyone's shock, they found out that the content of the messages exchanged between Ryan and his impersonated profile was inconsistent with Christine's typical writing style. This discrepancy suggested that someone had deliberately crafted these communications to mislead Ryan into believing he was engaged with Christine. The impersonation played a crucial role in the investigation, as it indicated a predetermined effort to lure Ryan into the Banfield home. The messages contained details that would have made them appear authentic to Ryan, further complicating the narrative surrounding his presence in the house on February 24, 2023. As detectives pieced together this information, it became clear that Joseph Ryan had been manipulated into a dangerous situation, believing he was meeting someone he trusted. This revelation not only highlighted the complexity of the case, but also raised questions about the motives behind the impersonation and how it fit into the larger context of events leading to the double homicide. As investigators got deeper into the case, they uncovered startling forensic evidence that significantly altered the trajectory of the investigation. One of the most flabbergasting findings was the manipulation of blood at the crime scene. Analysis revealed that blood from Christine Banfield's body had been deliberately smeared onto Joseph Ryan's body after his death. This act suggested an attempt to frame Ryan as the attacker, complicating the narrative surrounding the events of February 24, 2023. The implications of this evidence were profound. It indicated that someone had gone to great lengths to create a false narrative regarding the circumstances of Ryan's presence in the Banfield home. The forensic team examined blood spatter patterns and conducted DNA analysis, which confirmed the origin of the blood found on Ryan. First, the fake social media profile with Christine's picture, and then the blatant tampering of evidence and an attempt to frame Ryan by smearing Christina's blood on him. The investigators realized the story was much more complicated than what it was made to look like. All guns pointed toward Juliana and Brendan, both of whom claimed their actions were in self-defense and nothing else. After several months of investigation that could only complicate the case, the Law Enforcement Service's needle fell on Juliana in October 2023. She was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and use of a firearm in connection with the death of Joseph Ryan. The decision to charge Juliana stemmed from a combination of evidence and her role in the events of February 24, 2023. Investigators noted that she was present at the scene during the critical moments leading up to Ryan's death and provided conflicting accounts of her actions that morning. Juliana's narrative, which included her claim of leaving to take the Banfield's daughter to the zoo and returning for forgotten lunches, raised suspicions among detectives. They found inconsistencies in her story that did not align with the physical evidence collected at the crime scene. Additionally, forensic analysis and the deliberate attempt to frame Ryan using Christine's blood all but sealed the deal for Juliana. The arrest unfolded on October 15, 2023, when law enforcement officials arrived at Juliana's residence. She was taken into custody without incident. During her arrest, officers explained the charges against her and informed her of her rights. Juliana maintained her innocence throughout this process, asserting that she acted out of fear for her life and believed she was defending herself and Christina Banfield from an intruder. Following her arrest, Juliana was transported to a local detention facility where she awaited processing. Her initial court appearance was scheduled shortly after her arrest. During this hearing, prosecutors presented evidence that included the same forensic findings and details of her communications on the day of the incident. As legal proceedings began, prosecutors argued that Juliana's actions demonstrated a reckless disregard for human life. They contended that she had played an active role in escalating a situation that ultimately resulted in violence. The case against her continued to develop as investigators worked to gather additional evidence while preparing for trial. If you're wondering why Brendan was not arrested, here is an explanation. Law enforcement officials saw Brendan's shooting of Joseph Ryan as protective. As per Brendan's claims, he was threatened by Ryan, the intruder, and if he had not acted as fast as he did, Ryan would have killed his wife with the knife he had around her neck. However, Juliana's deliberate attempt to shoot Ryan, after he had already been shot by Brendan, was seen as a second-degree murder. Once Juliana was arrested, the focus shifted to Brendan Banfield, but there was a lack of evidence to build a case against him. But the investigators did not give up. What they found out next was shockingly devastating. In August 2022, Juliana Perez-McAlesh moved into the Banfield home as a live-in nanny. This arrangement marked the beginning of an affair between her and Brendan Banfield. The The dynamic of their relationship evolved quickly, as both individuals found themselves drawn to each other amidst the responsibilities of family life. Fast forward to October 2023, when investigators began uncovering evidence of this affair during their ongoing inquiry into the events surrounding the deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. The discovery of the relationship raised significant suspicions regarding potential motives behind the murders, suggesting that personal interests may have influenced the actions taken that fateful day. During a search of Brendan's bedroom, law enforcement officials found several notable findings that further implicated him in the unfolding narrative. Among these discoveries were framed photos of Brendan and Juliana, including a personal connection that went beyond professional boundaries. Additionally, Juliana's lingerie was found in the room, serving as tangible evidence of their intimate relationship. The combination of these findings not only painted a picture of an illicit relationship, but also provided investigators with critical evidence to build a case against Brendan. The implications of this affair became increasingly significant as authorities pieced together the timeline and circumstances surrounding the murders. The relationship between Juliana and Brendan was no longer just a personal matter. It had transformed into a central element of the investigation, influencing how detectives approached their inquiries and shaping the narrative surrounding both individuals' actions on the 24th of February, 2023. In mid-February 2023, just weeks before the tragic events of February 24th, Brendan Banfield made a significant decision to purchase a Glock pistol from a shooting range. This transaction raised immediate red flags for investigators, especially given the timing and the subsequent homicides that unfolded shortly thereafter. The purchase of a firearm just before such a violent incident suggested potential premeditation, leading authorities to scrutinize Brendan's actions more closely. Additionally, it was revealed that both Brendan and Juliana had traded in their phones for new models shortly before the incident. This change in communication devices sparked further suspicion among investigators. The timing of these trades, occurring just days before the murders, indicated a possible attempt to eliminate evidence or communication records that could link them to premeditated actions leading up to the incident. Investigators began to question whether these actions were part of a larger plan involving both Juliana and Brendan, as they sought to establish a cleaner timeline of events leading up to the confrontation with Joseph Ryan. Even after finding substantial evidence against Brendan Banfield, the law enforcement authorities needed more. Hence, following Juliana's arrest, law enforcement officials implemented a strategy to monitor her communications while she was incarcerated. This included tapping phone calls between Juliana and Brendan, a common investigation technique used in high-profile cases where the relationship between suspects could yield crucial evidence. The decision to tap these calls was driven by the need to gather information that could clarify the dynamics of their relationship and any potential premeditated actions related to the murders of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. In a recorded call from jail, Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney, Eric Klingon, revealed during a bond hearing that Juliana expressed concern about their relationship. She told Brendan, "I hope you are not just staying with me because you are afraid of me turning against you." The statement indicated her awareness of the precarious situation they were both in, and suggested that she was contemplating the implications of their actions on that fateful day. Brendan's response during this phone call was equally telling. He allegedly instructed her to keep her mouth shut on the recorded phone line. This directive all but put the last nail in Brendan's coffin. He was clearly attempting to control the narrative and prevent Juliana from divulging information that could implicate him in the crimes. Finally, the time came in September 2024 when Brendan Banfield was arrested by law enforcement authorities following an extensive 11-month-long investigation into the events surrounding the deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. The arrest took place after detectives gathered substantial evidence linking Brendan to the crimes, including forensic findings, inconsistencies in his statements, and more. Law enforcement apprehended Brendan at his residence without incident. He would face serious legal repercussions following his arrest in September 2024. The primary charges brought against him were aggravated murder and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. The charge of aggravated murder stemmed from the circumstances surrounding the death of Joseph Ryan, who was shot in the Banfield home on February 24, 2023. Prosecutors argued that Brendan's actions demonstrated a reckless disregard for human life and indicated premeditation, as he allegedly orchestrated the events that led to the confrontation with Ryan. Additionally, Brendan was charged with using a firearm in the commission of a felony, specifically related to the use of his service weapon during the incident. This charge highlighted the severity of the crime, as it involved not only the unlawful taking of another person's life, but also the use of a firearm, which escalated the nature of the offense. When it came to the prosecution's case against Brendan, they had covered every little bit of the loopholes. After all, they had spent 11 months preparing a case against him. They presented some key inconsistencies in his account of the 24th of February 2023. The first thing they brought up was Brendan's time and actions on that day. He left his house around 7:10 a.m., but did not proceed to work as scheduled. Instead, he parked at a McDonald's restaurant and remained in his vehicle, seemingly waiting for a call from Juliana. This suggested that he may have been anticipating the unfolding events, rather than heading to his job. Then there was the peculiar question of 2 911 calls. Both were placed approximately 15 minutes apart. During the first call, the dispatcher heard nothing but moaning, but never did Juliana mention she was hurt during the entire confrontation or in immediate danger. So why was the first call blank? Only after 15 minutes of the first call did Juliana ask for help from the authorities. If the situation was this dire as they presented it, why was it not reported immediately? Maybe because they had not yet finished the job of putting both victims away. Another key mistake made by Brendan, which the prosecution picked up on, was the retrieving of a second weapon. After shooting Joseph Ryan and blinding him according to Juliana, Brendan asked her to retrieve a Glock semi-automatic pistol from a gun safe in the bathroom. This request was puzzling. If Joseph posed an immediate threat after being shot in the head, why would Brendan need Juliana to shoot him again? This inconsistency suggested a lack of urgency in their supposed self-defense scenario. Why do you think Brendan asked Juliana to shoot Ryan with a second gun? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Hence, it was the prosecution who firmly contended that Brendan Banfield was not merely a bystander in the tragic events of February 24, 2023, but rather an active participant in a calculated plan that ultimately led to the death of Joseph Ryan. Investigators uncovered evidence suggesting that Brendan was the one who orchestrated the impersonation of Christine on the fetish website, FetLife. This profile, created under the name Anastasia9, was first used by Brendan himself, and then he instructed Juliana to use it in order to lure Joseph Ryan to the Banfield home under false pretenses. The prosecution argued that this act demonstrated Brendan's willingness to engage in deceitful tactics to achieve his goals. There was also a clear motive and evidence linking him directly to his wife's murder. Testimonies indicated that he had expressed a desire to be rid of her shortly after beginning his affair with Juliana. This desire for freedom from marriage was framed as a driving force behind his actions on that fateful day. Once the deed was done, he would make a failed attempt at tampering with the evidence by smearing Christina's blood on Ryan in order to frame him, when he was the one to have orchestrated the entire plan. In April 2024, a new significant development occurred in the case when the arrest suspect, Juliana, entered a plea agreement. Following her arrest, Juliana faced charges of second-degree murder and use of a firearm in connection with Joseph Ryan's death. As the investigation progressed, the evidence against her mounted, prompting discussions about a potential plea deal. The details of the plea agreement included a change of charges against her. Juliana pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge than the original second-degree murder charge she faced. This decision was part of a negotiated plea agreement with prosecutors. The plea deal was negotiated between Juliana's defense attorney and the prosecution. This process involved discussions about the evidence against her, potential sentencing outcomes, and any cooperation she might provide regarding Brendan Banfield or other aspects of the case. By pleading to a lesser charge, Juliana aimed to reduce her potential sentence compared to what she might have faced if convicted of second-degree murder. This strategic move was intended to mitigate her legal consequences. The turning point in the plea agreement came when Juliana agreed to cooperate with law enforcement, providing information about Brendan and other relevant details related to the case, especially what transpired on the day of the murders. This cooperation was beneficial for both parties, offering Juliana a more favorable outcome while assisting prosecutors in building their case against Brendan. October 29, 2024 was the day when months and months of negotiations between the two parties came to an end, and Juliana agreed to cooperate with the authorities. As for her new sentence details, she could face 10 years, but may be released with credit for time served. Do you think it was the right decision for her to take up the plea agreement, or should she have fought the case? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. As the legal proceedings continue, significant upcoming trials are on the horizon for both Juliana Perez Magalhaes and Brendan Banfield. Juliana's sentencing is set for March 21, 2025, where she faces up to 10 years in prison, potentially with time served considered. Meanwhile, Brendan's trial is scheduled for February 3, 2025, as he confronts serious charges of aggravated murder and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, which could result in life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The complexities of the case remain under scrutiny as ongoing investigations may uncover further details about the events leading up to the tragic deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. Both defendants' legal statuses are critical as they navigate their respective charges and prepare for what lies ahead in the courtroom. The outcomes of these trials will be pivotal in determining justice for all parties involved. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope the stories gave you something to think about or dream about. Sleep well, stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe. Good night.